In a career spanning decades, Summit Fire and EMS Chief Jeff Berino has never seen devastation like he saw in Paradise, California. Berino visited the decimated town in the Sierra Nevada foothills this past week, where he surveyed sweeping damage, including 14,000 destroyed homes and a burn scar the size of Chicago. Could a nightmare situation like Paradise happen here in Summit County? Officials say our two areas share similar trees, topography, and human factors. Almost every last resident in Summit lives in the wildland-urban interface, where wildfires are most likely to occur. Krystal 93 invited Chief Berino and Summit Fire's Steve Lipsher to the studio for an overview of the Paradise Fire, how to protect your home now, and why bigger, more destructive fires are the new abnormal. Phil Lindeman, Krystal Media News Director, in the studio today with Jeff Berino and Steve Lipsher out of Summit Fire and EMS. Guys, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And just when you thought that wildfire season was finished, it mostly is here in Summit County, but these days we need to keep talking about wildfire, and especially after what happened in California. Now tell me what season Colorado is in right now. Not wildfire season, right?
Not wildfire season, ski season, but wildfire season has extended over the years, going from March till October and November.
And it continues on, especially in areas like we just saw with the devastating fires out in California. They are getting racked year-round almost at this point by fires. You just visited out there, Chief Berino. Tell me what you saw.
Correct. I spent 3 days in the Paradise area, which is in Butte County, as part of a fire investigation team. The devastation was hard to fathom. It was the whole town was literally wiped out.
Yeah, and that's what I've been hearing from news reports and also seeing photos that, entire town was taken out and very quickly. What kind of similarities did you see between an area like Paradise and here in Summit County?
Phil, we did see some similarities. We think, wildfires are just made a California problem. I saw a lot of similar topography. The fire did run down the hill into a lot of neighborhoods that have one road, dead ends in and out. We have some of them right here in Summit County. This fire did burn downhill, which is unusual. Went from 6,000 feet down to 1,700 feet, and literally caught people before they even got out of their house.
It's just wild to see how fast and how quickly that moved, and that's the sort of thing that any wildfire can do, though. A wildfire, like you said, this was a little unusual in the way it moved, but any wildfire, given the right circumstances, can move that quickly.
Correct. They react to wind, topography, and the fuel package in that order. We certainly have those conditions here in Summit County.
And I recently came across a report showing that by now about half of Colorado's population lives in what we call a wildland-urban interface. Explain real quick what that means, what that term is.
I think you're talking about the WUI.
I've never heard that side.
Yeah.
That makes it that's an easier thing to say than wildland-urban interface. Yeah.
Colorado and certainly Summit County has significant WUI interface problems, and that's where homes are built adjacent to, or in some cases in the woods. We define the WUI area generally as in all homes and areas within a half mile of U.S. Forest Service boundaries. And that does cover the majority of Summit County. I think Summit County's close to 85% U.S. Forest Service. Measure a half mile in from all federal land. That covers a good chunk of Summit County.
All right. So even though half of the population here in Colorado lives in that interface, here in Summit County, just about the entire population lives within that boundary.
I agree. I think there's some core areas, perhaps in downtown Silverthorne, Frisco, Breck, that are outside of that WUI boundaries. But what we saw in California is the fire doesn't know where the WUI boundaries are, and we were literally getting. I saw house-to-house ignition. The houses became another fuel type. I know we're going to talk about defensible space. In some cases, these homes had great D-space, but it was strictly home-to-home ignition.
Okay. Yeah, and when it comes to population density, what kind of role does that play? As we're building more homes and more people are coming into Summit County, does that increase the risk of, like you said, that home-to-home fire?
We have some neighborhoods in Summit County where the density has increased, and homes are adjacent to each other out of necessity due to limited property. So that does create a problem for firefighters. One thing we can do is besides defensible space, which Steve will talk about, is to ask people, if possible, to harden their homes. Maybe we can talk about that.
Steve, I'll kick it over to you. Tell me real quick about defensible space and what people can be doing now, in the outside of summer, to be protecting their home against those future danger of wildfire.
A lot of what people can be doing right now is more in the home hardening area. Defensible space, obviously, you want to be able to get to the vegetation, and most of it's buried under snow right now. But things like going up into your attic and looking out and seeing if your eaves in the attic have metal screens on the insides of them, which would keep embers from penetrating inside the roof of the home. I always advocate that people have an annual review with their insurance agents. In the worst case scenario, just to make sure that they're adequately covered. And then once we start getting into spring again, we can start looking at the vegetation around homes. We like to see homes with a nice bubble of mostly vegetation-free areas around them, so that we don't have trees carrying fire from treetop to the roof of the home, so that we don't have ornamental vegetation like juniper bushes that are right up next to a home, wood chips in the landscaping. Those types of things can make a huge difference in limiting the ability of fire from reaching homes.
So like you said, some of the stuff that you can be doing right now is checking out maybe the inside of your home and the home itself, the structure of the home, to make sure that it's protected and safe. What kind of stuff should people be looking for when it comes to insurance? Like you said, make sure that you've got the coverage. What kind of coverage do you guys like to have, or what should people be really having?
I think that's an individual discussion with one's insurance agent. I think the biggest thing is to know that there's a big difference between replacement value and loss value, and to understand the difference and make an informed choice in that direction. If you have only loss value, it's going to cost more to rebuild your home than it cost originally, and so you're going to have to pay for that difference to rebuild. Of course, all of that's a worst case scenario thing, but I think we need to be realistic. When we see a situation like Paradise, California, and when we see places in Colorado where fire has reached into developed areas and destroyed many homes, we should be pretty serious-minded about recognizing that the potential is here.
And I've been hearing a lot of talk about, the new normal, or maybe not the new normal, the new abnormal. Is that what we're coming into? Is that wildfire is changing to the way that what we've been seeing, with more fires, more devastation, more destruction, and unfortunately more death, could become the new standard?
You hit the nail on the head, Phil. It's the new abnormal. Unfortunately, we're seeing longer wildfire seasons, more serious wildfires, more destruction. Whether that relates to fuel management or climate change, we'll let people draw their own conclusions on that. But the bottom line is we're seeing a longer wildfire season and a more severe wildfire season over the past several decades.
And then finally, as we look at Summit County, I know that there are some things in place, such as Measure 1A that was passed recently to help with some wildfire mitigation and wildfire efforts come summertime. What are some other things that are being done to, again, protect Summit County as our population grows and as these wildfires do become more prevalent?
With regards to wildfire, we have, during the winter season, we call it winter work, and the work never stops. In the spring and summer, it's a little more evident because we're out in the field. Right now is the planning stages for the next wildfire season. Right amount of people, right equipment, right plans, right projects, whether that's fuel breaks, defensible space, fire-wise neighborhoods. The work never ends, and we call it winter work, and we stay busy.
That's right, because firefighting is a year-round job. you guys are looking at this stuff all year round. And I guess, again, Chief, after visiting Paradise and visiting some of the areas in California, what could you tell Summit County listeners about, their own homes and their own safety come next summer? What would you like folks to know?
One is heed all evacuations and notices. Please sign up for Code Red. It's our SC alert here in Summit County. That is one very good way of staying informed on what's going on in the event of a wildfire. In Paradise, those that got some early notice got out. Those that did not get out. So please sign up for the alert systems that are in place here in Summit County. The other thing to do is don't have the attitude, this can't happen to me or can't happen in my neighborhood. I have a list on my refrigerator because I'm going to be busy, so my family knows what to take and what to get out. Yeah. Another thing that assists if your home is destroyed, take pictures and inventory of the contents of your home and keep it somewhere else with relatives, a safe deposit box, wherever. It does make it easier when dealing with insurance companies on claims if you can show what you had in your home as far as contents.
But like you were saying, again, the most important thing is to make sure you're looking after yourself and your family's safety first, and then you can look at some of those other outside things.
Correct. If the law enforcement and firefighters don't have to worry about people in the way, it makes it a lot easier to combat the fires. So please sign up if you have not.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for coming in to talk a little bit more about wildfire. Like I said, I know it feels like we talk about this year-round at this point, but at the same time, it's something that deserves recognition year-round and deserves awareness year-round.
Well, thanks for having us. And yes, I'm afraid that where we live, wildfires is our natural hazard. No different than if you lived in Kansas and it were tornadoes, or in Miami and it were hurricanes. So it just pays to be prudent and to understand what the risks are and to be prepared for them and minimize them as much as possible.
Perfect. Well, Steve, thanks again for coming in, and Chief Berino, thank you as well for coming in.
Thank you.
Of course, talking wildfire in winter here on Krystal 93.